Example 5, IQ scores of statistics students. Assume that we want to estimate the mean IQ score for the population of statistics students. How many statistics students must be randomly selected for IQ tests if we want 95% confidence that the sample mean is within 3 IQ points of the population mean? So we want to first figure out what is the critical value. Now keep in mind here that we want to find the critical z value. So to find the critical z value, the first thing we need to do is determine what alpha is. Well, alpha is going to equal 1 minus 0.95 since it's a 95% confidence. So that's going to give us 0.05. Step number 2, we want to take that alpha and then divide it by 2. Well, alpha is 0.05, and if we divide that by 2, it's going to give us 0.025. So again, what we want to be able to do is to find that critical z value where the area in the right tail is 0.025. So recall that when we look at our standard normal distribution, we know that the mean is going to be 0, and this is on the z-scale, and we're looking for that z critical value here on the right, where this area is 0.025. So what we're looking for is what is that critical value. So we know that the area is 0.025, and what we want to determine is what is that critical z value. Okay, so if we use StatCrunch, we're going to open up StatCrunch. Okay, now again, since we're looking for the critical z value for the sample size, we're going to go to Stat, go to Calculators, and then scroll down to Normal Distribution, because that's the z. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure our mean is 0, our standard deviation is 1. And so the area is to the right, so we want to change this to be greater than or equal to. And then we're going to put in the area of 0.025. And that's going to give us our critical value. So now that we have our critical value, let's go ahead and copy that. And then we're going to round that to 2 decimal places. So that critical value here is 1.96. So therefore, there is our critical value, which is 1.96. Okay. So now, for the 95% confidence interval, again, we have alpha equals 0.05, and so the critical value that we found is 1.96. Now, because we want the sample mean to be within 3 IQ points of the population mean, that tells us that the margin of error is E, which is equal to 3. Now also, this is very important where it says we can assume that the population standard deviation is 15. It says, see the discussion that immediately precedes this example. Well, if we take a look up here, it says estimate, use prior results. You estimate the value of the population standard deviation by using the results of some other earlier study. So in addition, we can sometimes be creative in our use of other known results. Using a value for a population standard deviation that is larger than the true value will make the sample size larger than necessary, but using a value for the sample standard deviation that is too small would result in a sample size that is inadequate. So when determining the sample size n, any errors should always be conserved in the sense they make the sample size too large instead of too small. Well, in this case here, using a prior study, we're going to say that the population standard deviation is equal to 15. So now, using that formula, we're going to get the following. We know that the critical value, or the critical z value, is 1.96. And then we're going to multiply it by the population standard deviation of 15. And then we're going to divide it by the margin of error, which is 3, and then square that result. Let's now apply this in our calculator. So I'm going to put one parenthesis and then another one so I can go ahead and contain the numerator. So it's going to be 1.96 times 15. then close a parenthesis, and then I'm going to divide that by 3, and then I'm going to close the outside parenthesis, and then I'm going to square that. And then that gives us 96.04. Now remember that with a sample size, we always need to round up, so we round up that to be 97. So the interpretation would be the following. Among the thousands of statistics students, we need to obtain a simple random sample of at least 97 of their IQ scores. With a simple random sample of only 97 statistics students, we will be 95% confident that the sample mean is within 3 IQ points of the true population mean.